So I guess we are live now. Am I audible to everybody?
Yes.
Well, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. This is a webinar organized by FICCI Arise. Just to give little introduction, I don't think FICCI needs any introduction. It's almost a century-old chamber, a business chamber which everybody knows. It was set up in 1927. But one thing that not many people probably would know is that this particular chamber, FICCI, was set up at the behest of none other than the father of the nation, Mr. Shri Mahatma Gandhi. He had encouraged the industrialists then to set up the chamber FICCI as we understand today. FICCI Arise stands for FICCI Alliance for Reimagining School Education, which is a collegium of stakeholders who represent different facets of school education. FICCI Arise was born in the year 2016. The members include several high quality and reputed independent schools from across the country, eminent educators, foundations, civil society representatives, think tanks, and technical experts. The fundamental vision of FICCI Arise is to become a catalyst in the government and private efforts for raising the quality of learning outcomes across schools and to ensure that no child is left behind. In fact, the motto of FICCI Arise, as you people would probably have seen, is student first. So everything that we do at FICCI Arise is around the student. So educators, we are all in this new normal, as a lot of people have started calling it, and I myself call this as a new normal. And it's been remarkable to see that how most of you people, without having any lead time to prepare for the new normal, how and in a quite seamless manner you switched on from a face-to-face to an online learning mode. And we at FICCI say that all of you are actually also the Corona heroes, because you continue to engage students sitting in their homes, while everybody knows that all of you also sitting in your homes have a greater responsibility to do during this lockdown period. So, from my side and from everybody in the governing body and the members of FICCI, a big salute to all our educators who are real Corona heroes here. Well, the life has to go on, and the human race has always been very resilient. And while this is a challenge, as we all are embracing, it also throws a lot of opportunities. If I talk about myself, I always knew about this platform that existed. I always had that loaded on my devices, but I never used it because I never had any opportunity to use it. And now that I'm using it, I'm finding a lot of benefits of it. And likewise, all of you educators. But there still remain a lot of questions and answers. How do we prepare for something, especially because we did not have any lead time? And that's when the FICCI Arise organization thought that let's conduct a series of webinars where we discuss, a lot of these issues, and also present from experts sitting all over the country and along the globe of, what needs to be done. We are very fortunate to have Highr as our, as our partner, as our knowledge partner for these webinar series. Highr is a teacher professional development and evaluation company, which enables educators and schools to make more informed choices about classroom teaching through data-driven personalized coaching programs for K-12 educators. And Pallavi spearheads, she's a founder of Highr, and Pallavi is an education policy specialist, having previously worked with the UN and the Government of India and has trained teachers across different curriculums. She is also a trained IB and IGCSE secondary educator and is a fellow of Teachers College, Columbia University, New York. Before I pass over to Pallavi to take this webinar forward, I would just like to state that these webinars, which were conceptualized over a meeting of the governing body of FICCI Arise, that we also did not anticipate the reach that these webinars would have. We are delighted to share that our first three webinars, this is the fourth one, by the way, they witnessed an enthusiastic response with educators joining us from 536 countries and 536 cities and 47 countries across the globe, having close to 58,000 viewers on various platforms so far. So that itself talks about the need for this very, very important topic. And I think collectively, I take pride that FICCI Rise took the initiative of bringing this forth for everybody. Over to you, Pallavi, to engage all of us in this lovely journey with these very eminent educators who are there on the screen.
Thank you ever so much for that introduction, Prabhat sir. And good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and a very warm welcome to all of you on behalf of Highr to today's webinar. My name is Pallavi Dwivedi, and I'm the founder of Highr. And as Prabhat sir mentioned, we're a teacher professional development and evaluation company, and we work with schools and educators around the world to ensure that quality teaching reaches every classroom. I'd like to thank FICCI Arise for bringing us on board this very exciting initiative to connect educators and to share classroom ideas that have worked for schools as they've moved online. I'm delighted today to be sharing this space along with 4 extremely innovative educators for today's panel. Please join me in welcoming Ms. Sabina Sani, who's the headmistress, pre-primary and primary of the DPS Bhopal, Ahmedabad. I'm also joined by Ms. Saintani Mishra, primary faculty at the Gyanshri School, Noida. Also joining us all the way from Hong Kong is Ms. Katie Steers. She's the PYP faculty at the Sharton Junior School, which is a member of the English Schools Foundation. I'm also joined by Ms. Madhu Nangia. Ms. Madhu is the form tutor and the deputy head PYP at the G.D. Goenka School in Gurugram. So with our panelists on board, without further ado, I'd now like to get started with today's discussion. I'll start by sharing my screen with all of you and getting us all started with what we're going to be doing in today's session. So as we're talking about managing student engagement online, the most crucial part is for us to actually first understand what the barriers to student engagement are and how we can actually activate our learners. But to activate them, we first need to understand what's deactivating them. And could it be then that our assessment that the student is simply not interested is perhaps something that requires further thought and exploration? So let's start by talking a little bit about what these different barriers are and how we can actually go about designing our teaching and learning processes by taking cognizance of these barriers and then actively pursuing strategies that help to resolve these barriers. So the first of these barriers is actually a very simple logistical one. Oftentimes, and this is particularly true for primary school students, students don't know how to use a lot of the tools that you've actually set out for them to use. They become disengaged because they have connectivity issues, the internet keeps going off, or they're not sure how to use Zoom or any other tool it is that you've set out. They also don't understand the norms and expectations that you've set out for these classroom sessions. As is, it takes time for younger students to be able to understand how they must conduct themselves within a classroom environment. But this new online environment is a completely different ballgame. So we have to be able to prepare them and get them acquainted with these different norms that we're putting in place, these different expectations we have of them when they're coming online. The second of these is actually a very crucial one, particularly for primary school kids, which is the social barrier. Students actually are unable to show you that they are engaged. In a classroom, it's very easy for them to quickly raise their hand or to shout out your name and get excited and call you to see something that they've made or drawn, but they can't do that when they're online. So you have to be able to create these channels where students are able to interact with you as well as with their peers to be able to show that they're doing something and they're doing something exciting. The third of these is actually a culmination of the first two barriers. When a student doesn't know how to engage, they don't know how to show you that they're engaged, they're bound to get demotivated. And we all know as primary school teachers that motivation is a very, very crucial part of getting a student hooked onto any kind of lesson at that age. Students can be very distracted. This is the first time they're studying online. Making them sit still for 30 minutes and have them watch your video or watch whatever activity that you're getting them to do in one place can actually be extremely tedious. And that's what we need to be able to overcome by giving them a certain amount of ownership of their work. And that ownership is what will drive motivation. So in today's session, all of the teachers are going to be talking to you all about how they've gone about addressing each of these specific barriers in their own classrooms. I'll start by talking about the logistical barriers and what we can do to be able to overcome that. The first of these and the most important of these is to set norms and expectations. Send out a class schedule with details. This is something that also helps parents. For a lot of the pre-primary school students, we do require a lot of parental support. So getting parents on board and getting them to understand when you're expecting this child online, at what time, what do they need when they come online, be it some crayons or drawing paper, or even have something as simple as a storybook ready from where they can read something out for their other classmates. These access tutorials for parents are just as crucial as they are for your students. So whenever you create these access tutorials, that you'll need somebody to be actually decoding this for your student as well if you've got very, very young kids in the pre-primary, for example. So you'll want to make these yourself. That's another act of reaching out to your student. And while you're establishing these norms and expectations, keep in mind that you need to be able to reduce the parents' tech dependency. You don't want to be making this entire process only and only reliant on whether or not a parent can use a particular tech platform. So sending out small samplers like the one that's on my screen right now, where you're actually explaining how a Zoom screen works, would be something that might be useful and go a step ahead in helping you get the parent as well as the student on board. Addressing motivational barriers, the most important part here is that you need to set the task for the student and not for their parents. You have to make sure that what you're setting out is extremely simple for the child to be able to follow themselves without being dependent too much on the parent. And the parents are simply present as advisories or as supervisors in very many ways. So simply perhaps recount that activity or those set of instructions. Avoid long passive videos that students have to sit still and watch for extended periods of time, as well as lots of teacher talk. You can include lots of non-academic tasks as well, things like drawing tutorials or just observations of different times of the day, or perhaps the plants in their garden or their balconies, and ask them to come back and share what they saw. Getting these kinds of non-academic bits into the presentation will also help bring up your students' motivation, because they'll be able to add to something. Recognize the student, celebrate what they're sharing. That adds a huge, huge amount to their motivation as well. The last of these is promoting student agency. How is it that you give students an opportunity to share what they've made, something that they've created? Lots of show and tell. Lots of choice in getting them to decide how they can share what they've learned. So if a student is not comfortable with video, allow them to perhaps be able to send you something in writing or as a drawing and share their work. Student visibility is extremely crucial to this entire process of getting your students on board and motivated and activated and engaged. So with that, I'd like to stop my part of the presentation, and I will now move on to our first speaker, Ms. Sayanthini Mishra. Sayanthini will be talking to us a little bit more about each of these different aspects and how she's dealt with them in her own classroom. So over to you, Sayanthini.
Good evening, all. Let me begin quickly by sharing my screen. In a moment, okay. So the topic today is keeping students engaged online in online class management. And I would like to begin by saying is that start your lessons with an ice-breaking session. This will be important. I'm going to be trying to pack a lot of information into the time that I have. So I'm going to share the things that have worked in my classroom. For instance, a game of scrambled words have worked great for me. It has let me know my new class's ability to spell, vocabulary, and also retained and captured their interest. It has helped me to check for pre-knowledge, and it will work for you. You can use PPTs and PDF files, and all of these will help you to make your Google Hangout sessions a success story. Moving ahead, just give me a moment. Sorry about that. We have also employed other techniques like quizzes, like asking students to go ahead and engage in laughter therapy. These are simple things that bring the children out of their immediate surrounding into your online classroom. A beginner's tip: unmute only one participant at a time to ensure effective teaching learning transaction. Make your session interactive, online or offline. We like to be heard, children and teachers alike. So if I'm talking about Charles Dickens, I will tell them that he created the character Uncle Scrooge. I will introduce them to the classics while allowing them to relate Uncle Scrooge to DuckTales. And that is how learning can go on. The power of Google Forms, briefly. Use it for quizzes, use it for exit tickets, use it for worksheets. I have gained a lot from that. When I have trained my student to do a worksheet on You Can't Be That through the Google form, they are actually kind of getting trained to do online worksheets for the future TOEFLs and GREs. And that is where I feel this experience is a teaching much beyond this current crisis. It is allowing me to check for and fill in gaps in understanding.
Can I just quickly, sorry to interrupt you. I think there's a problem with the presentation. We're not really able to see your presentation very clearly. Would you like me to share it from my end?
Yes, please.
Sure.
So I have stopped sharing.
Okay. Here we go. Please let me know when you'd like me to change the slides.
Yes, so yeah, I would like to move ahead. Sharing the link, thank you so much. Okay. So sharing the link for Google Forms, that also is, it's a 3-step process and a very simple process, but it is something that will allow you to use Google Forms as both material for your synchronous lessons and asynchronous lessons. You can give it as an assignment, you can take it in class, and within a minute, your students do it, they submit it, you're ready to give them feedback. Makes our report cards seem a little weary by comparison, but still, that's the way it is. Moving ahead. Next slide, please, ma'am. Our school management at Gyanshri and the way our whole school thinks is very forward thinking. We like experiences over lectures. And therefore, we designed the online literary week. For learning and fun, we can't lock down either one of them. Take a look at the video, and after that, I'll speak briefly about it. Can you please play the video? Thank you so much. So this was all about giving experiences of the language to the children in different formats and forms. our students were encouraged, the upper primary Shrians, grade 3, 4 and 5, grade 4 Shrians went ahead and read recipes, prepared them and also presented them. That was language on a different scale. While grade 5 Shrians wrote original poems and stories and presented them in a mock book reading session. And the authors of the day were very pleased with themselves. It was a fun session. Shall we move ahead to the next slide, please? Thank you so much. The road ahead indeed lies with digital assignments. Pen and paper will take a backseat. There are no two ways. And given the situation, we have encouraged our children to share their work with us through videos, through messages, through short clips. And once they do this, we compile it and give it right back to them. This keeps them motivated. The important part of this exercise is that it makes them feel involved on an entirely different level. It's like seeing yourself in a movie. And I would like to share what we did on Mother's Day. We encouraged our Shrians to share self-composed messages for their mothers as short videos, and we compiled them and shared them back on the special occasion. The important part of that entire exercise for me as a teacher was self-composed. None of it was directed, and none of it could be directed because that was the child's love for their mother and the child using language to express that love, which is where the learning kicked in. Can we have the video, please?
My mama is a very special person for me. My chef mama cooks food for me. My mentor mama teaches me. My doctor mama takes care of me when I'm unwell. Thank you, mama, for making my life so beautiful. Happy Mother's Day.
Thank you so much. Next slide. Next slide. Okay. Next slide, please. Okay. There are other things that we are doing at our school, like flipped classrooms and compiling people's work using Adobe Premiere Pro CC. All of these experiences are giving children an ability to learn, to think for themselves. So what started as a general discussion about the types of material used and the types of fibers found in different states of India, children volunteered to dress up according to the different states. And then they went on a research trip of their own and came back and had a wonderful session in which they explained about the food, the culture, the language, the literature of the states which they represented. A small discussion is going a long way, and that's the best part of this kind of teaching for me. We are sharing links and websites because we are encouraging further learning, but it is what the children are picking up that is making this work, that is making this child-centric. Moving ahead. We are also doing immersive reading activities, a fancy term for a very simple thing. You teach something academically and connect it to other forms of art and life. You learn something in the book, you apply it elsewhere in life. That is learning, plain and simple. So people are designing posters for their building lobbies. People are making dolls' houses. And by people, I mean children. Let's treat them as adults. They have almost got there. They are making dolls' houses and they are using math measurements from their math classes, imagination from their English classes. You name it, they're using it. You discuss Earth Day with the class, they come back with mini ecosystems to you. And I am really proud to say that our children are the most resilient force during this time. Last but not the least, practicing empathy. My presentation did not work on my system. And I am so grateful all of you have still listened to me so nicely. That is empathy. And that happens every time. Today. Thank you so much.
Anthony, thank you so much for that fantastic presentation and for keeping your nerves about you even when your presentation didn't work. And that requires great skills, and I think primary school teachers display these kinds of skills most well. Okay, so I'd now like to move on to our next speaker. Our next speaker is Miss Sabina. Sabina, over to you to talk about what you've been doing at your school.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you, Pallavi and FICCI, for having me over. Give me a minute. Yes, so we're going to talk about very interesting, and I'm going to definitely learn and share about this interesting topic on student engagement. So I wanted to begin with a quote. Caring about students beyond the boundaries of the classroom is the first step to starting engagement. We definitely want all our students to be engaged, but with care. That's really, really important. Talking about our approach to online learning, we being a very large school, having close to around 6,000 students, we had a challenging task to continue the student learning and also to make them feel connected, which is very important right now. For this, asynchronous learning seems suitable to us for the younger age group because it gives the students, the learners, they are able to learn at their own pace, and keeping in mind that the children are young. So we wanted to limit the screen time for them too. Now we are using a variety of tools. As you can see there in the presentation, we already, because we are a very progressive school, so we already have our school portal and a learning management system in place. But still, to go completely online, we had to really, really plan. So there are various tools that we are using, like the Padlet, the Google Map tools, the learning outcome-based presentations. And we have around 70 plus customized videos, which have been created by our own teachers, just the way they would have been teaching in the class. So different concepts, we wanted the students to learn the same way. So we are sending them to the students through the portal, and there's a daily plan for that so that the students know where and how to access. Now, keeping in mind that the students are not in the regular classroom setup. So we thought it was very important that we need to have our focus areas very clear for the student management, student engagement. So these are the three areas that we broadly came on to. One being, of course, the conceptual engagement, which is really important because definitely we want to know that how much the student has learned about any particular topic along with being engaged. The next being peer learning, that too through collaboration. Now we know that the student learn much better when they are in groups and when they collaborate, and that's what they really like, and that's what they would be missing because not in the classroom setup. So the next being the emotional and physical well-being. This being very, very important during this scenario. So we really want to focus on this, that we have to look at the holistic development of the children, holistic well-being of the students, and striking that emotional chord with each and every student. So with these points, we have progressed further in all the planning that we have done. Now, coming on to, I would be talking about the strategies that we have been using. The first one being the conceptual engagement. Now here, there have been some interesting things that have been done. For example, this 3-2-1 bridge, which was really a hit, in which the students, after they went through the topic, they were asked about 3 facts that they learned and 2 questions that they would have related to the topic, and any one opinion that they have or any thought they have related to the topic, and then complete the whole process by having a group discussion through a video call wherein the children get involved and the teacher gets involved, and there is a healthy sharing that happens among them. The next one being See, Think and Wonder. In this, the Google Map app was used, and the students were asked to take a virtual tour of Taj. And then responses and what they think about it and what they wonder. So this was again a very, very exciting activity. Now here you can see the students taking a virtual tour, writing some questions and some kind of observations, and then filling up the see, think, and one. Coming on to the next, peer learning through collaboration. Here, the different activities that we've been doing is think, ink, pair, share. Now, for this topic of abstract and concrete noun, like I mentioned that we have customized videos which the students go through. So after that, they were asked to think about and draw about abstract and concrete noun and define in their own words what is their understanding of that. And then get into the pairing activity, wherein the students form groups, which the teacher has already conveyed, and form groups and let them know that this is their partner. And then finally, they come back and share again with the teacher through video call. The next one being My Dictionary. Now here, we've been using Padlet. The teacher puts a new word and along with the meaning, and encourages each and every child to have a word along with the meaning. And once everybody puts their responses, they have an entire class dictionary which is ready, which helps them for vocabulary building. Here are some responses. You can see the Padlet where the entries have been made, and there are the students sharing the representation that they have done about the abstract and concrete nouns with the teacher. The next, emotional and physical well-being. This is again a very important area, as I mentioned earlier. Keeping them happy, keeping them motivated is really, really very important. So here there was these two activities that I have listed here were very, very exciting. One is this chit chat. When the children are in the class, we don't need to focus on that because they constantly do that. But in this kind of a scenario, this had to be created wherein the students were asked to connect with their friends or their cousins through video call and share any 2 acts of kindness or any new skill that they have developed during the vacations. And they really, really enjoyed it, and the kind of sharings that they have done. The entire video thing has been shared with the teachers, and it's lovely to watch them. Next is the story time. As we know that all the children are at home along with the family. So this was focusing that they spent healthy time with the family. So they were asked to watch a story online and involving all the family members in enacting that story, getting the feel of each and every character. And then again in the form of a video that is shared. So there's everybody gets to know that what have been the feelings of every character when they were enacting that. Now we know that when students are in the school, they really look forward to their sports and their dance and their art classes. So we really didn't want that they should miss out on that. So our teachers have been giving tips on how to stay healthy and fit. They're giving them dance tips, yoga, and also motivating them through positive video messages, conveying to them that this too shall pass. Here we can see some images of the students doing the chit chat activity and the role plays, and teachers sending some motivational message in the form of video to the students, which they also in turn come back and share with them. And here there are these videos where the teachers are directing their students on sports, craft, as well as dance. Now, I would like to leave everyone with the thought, our responsibility as teachers has really become challenging. Like it was never before like so challenging like it has become now. There's so much available. There are so many resources for online teaching. It's important that we make judicious choices, keeping in mind the needs of our students. With this, I wrap up my presentation. Thank you very much, and over to you, Pallavi.
Thank you very, very much for that very interesting presentation, Sabina. It's absolutely marvelous to see how your school has actually gone ahead and run this entire program asynchronously and had such fantastic results. That's really something to learn from. And I'm sure lots of people have gone away with some very interesting ideas. I particularly like the one where you had the virtual trip to the Taj Mahal, especially now when children are all locked inside their homes. So a couple of interesting questions that have come up. I think let's take some of these, and panelists, please feel free to answer any of these. They're open to all of you. The first one is from Mukta Sharma. Sharma, who's asking if there's an answer for parents who feel that long screen hours and that we're at their beck, and that having these at their beck and call of muting and unmuting. So we'll sort of be able to take one panelist at one time. So can I ask one of you to respond to Mukta's question? How do we respond to parents concerned about long screen hours?
I think that with regards to screen time, just to say that I think that is a genuine concern, and we have to be very mindful of the age of the children and the amount of screen time. Sorry, I started talking at the same time as you, stand to say, Anthony.
Please go ahead.
That was my point, if you'd like to add on to it, but just it is a very question that we have to be very mindful of.
Absolutely spot on. We have to limit the screen time. At the same time, not 3-year-old, but maybe as they get a little bit bigger, the amount of time that you are giving, enable them to use the technology independently. Teach it to them. Kids today can handle smartphones at the age of 3. We know it. So give them the technology that they need. And in that ways, the moments that they will spend on screen will be more meaningful. Dependency never creates any learning at any age.
That's a wonderful thought right there. Dependency does not create any learning. So here's hoping you'll be able to share that with your parents as well, Mukta. One more interesting question coming in from Sunil Gupta. Sayanthini, this one is actually directed at you. They wanted to know more about laughter therapy and how you've been correlating that with your online teaching.
So it so happened that when we were planning our lessons in science, we had the portion in which we are teaching the children about teeth. And in English, we had a humorous poem. So we kind of got the children laughing, and we requested them, do not unmute yourself, just laugh. I can still see you laugh. And then we gradually, for English, took it from there to the point how laughter can turn the most banal moments into real moments of involvement and merrymaking. And that is, and then we introduced the poem, Daddy Fell into the Pond by Alfred Noyes, which is all about a very boring day, turning into an extremely eventful day when the father figure falls into a pond. As simple as that, as ridiculous, as funny. Now going on to teeth. So I discussed with the science teachers how they took it up in the class, and it was interesting. First, they got them laughing. Then they introduced the human element. So whom were you looking at when you were laughing? And obviously, you can't see your teeth when you're laughing. You see your friend's teeth. What portions of the teeth were visible to you? Can you identify? Can you name them? And then gradually you go into the lesson, and children have been drawn into the lesson without actually, having had a long introduction with some diagram of Colgate teeth on the screen.
That's wonderful. That's absolutely beautiful to hear how you're using poetry and funny moments to teach body parts. That's so, so clever and inventive. Thank you so much for that, Sayanthini. And now I'd like to move on to our next speaker for today. Katie, over to you. And Katie is going to be talking to us about some of the tools and things that she's been doing in her classroom. So over to you, Katie.
Hello, everybody. It's evening for me. I'm calling from Hong Kong, and I believe it's afternoon for you. So I'm not sure if it's quite as dark as it is in my background here. No, in fact, it's not actually my background screen. Although I do live in Hong Kong, I don't have such a beautiful view. So I'll go ahead and share my slides with you now. I've been delivering online learning for 13 weeks for my students. Last time I actually saw them in person was in January. So I have had numerous experiences during that time, and initially we started off with a lot of asynchronous learning, but as time's gone on we've introduced a lot more synchronous learning. So I'm going to share with you a few tips from that, and I'm just going to check that I'm to time, so I'm just setting my timer so I don't speak for too long. So to go right ahead, I've been using a lot of Zoom sessions, so the live video conferencing with the students. I teach a class of year 2, which is age 6 and 7 year olds. So obviously 6 and 7 year olds have a certain amount of time they can concentrate for, and then concentration wavers, and also they're often sitting in chairs. So I'm trying to think about how to make the sessions very interactive. So for example, this image on the left hand side that says vote with your body is just ways to get the children showing their responses, without necessarily having to wait turn by turn for everyone to speak. Which number is the highest number, which number is the lowest. They had to vote by putting their hands on their heads or their hands on their shoulders. In the right hand image, this is the children showing their self-assessing, their level of understanding using something called solo taxonomy. And I've put a link to that in the resources section of the Padlet that we'll be sharing with you later. So if you'd like to learn more about that, you can find more about it. I definitely recommend solo taxonomy, ideally to introduce with your class where they're with you in person, but it would be possible to introduce it online, and it's a way for children to self-assess their learning. I saw a few people asking questions around what about the range of abilities in your class, what about children who have additional needs, and making an inclusive classroom, and use of solo taxonomy I feel is very helpful for that. In terms of the Zoom sessions, then I find that I often find that I'm delivering a lot of content and a lot of talking, and I want the children to have equally as much time to talk. In my actual classroom, the classroom with walls, then I would be posing questions, but then I'd be getting the children to have conversations, collaborating, and I'd be going around and listening to them speaking. So I found actually by using a Zoom session and using the breakout room, I can actually pose a question to the children, ask them to go out and discuss it in pairs or threes. Actually, I think threes works quite well, just in case I send two and then one can't connect, then I don't want anyone by themselves. So I tend to send them in threes, and then they'll discuss, and actually I can drop into their individual breakout rooms and have a conversation with them. And then should we wish to, we can come back to the whole class discussion again in the main Zoom classroom. And I find that's a really great way to break up the routine and give them more opportunities to talk to each other as well. Thinking about some technology that I've used something called whiteboard.fi. This is an on-screen whiteboard, and the way it works is just like if the children are in the class and I ask them to write on a piece of paper or write on a mini whiteboard and hold up and show their answer, it means that I can look across my class and see what all their responses are. This is a digital version of the same thing. So I'm asking the children a maths question, and they're writing on their own individual screens. Some of them did it on iPads and some of them did it on laptops, and then they're responses are displayed as a grid for me, so I can see it as a snapshot, who's got it, who hasn't, and obviously I can give them individual feedback based on the responses they're giving to me. I often do ask the children simply to write on paper and hold things up. This is an alternative on-screen version. Moving on to asynchronous learning now. So obviously that is the learning that is, I'm preparing for them and I'm sending it out, and then there's a period of time before they respond things back. So we've got the communication back and forth, but it's not happening live. Something that I found very useful for that has been creating my own virtual classroom, and all these images are of me using an app called Bitmoji, which is a digital tool for curating like a mini-me version of yourself, essentially. I've been sending home learning out to the children, as I said, for 13 weeks, so it's just trying to make it look more attractive and more interesting. So this is my virtual classroom. Inside here, I have links to, the blue link is to go to the Zoom calls. If I click on that one, it goes to something called Go Noodle, which is an activity that they can do to stand up and move around if they want to break up their day. In the center would be the home learning slides for the day. We have a class photo over here, and there's various things. If you click on the pen tool, you can draw something. If you click on the books, then you go to our beach library, and in here I've got some electronic libraries at the top, and then individual books down the center. Also, if we click into this maths tray, then it takes me to some on-screen maths resources. If I was in the classroom, the children would be using MAB blocks. They'd be using manipulatives, they'd be using counters, but they may or may not have them in their own home. In addition, 100 squares. So all of these are clickable links that they can go into. And again, I've put my version of that into the Padlet, which will be shared later. So you're very welcome to take my picture out of it essentially and modify it and make it your own classroom should you wish to. These are all additional maths games that the children can play as well. Moving along, I found that one key platform that's been really, really important for me has been Seesaw. Initially, I used a lot of Flipgrid as well. Flipgrid, Seesaw, Padlet, various ways for the children for me to share information and for them to send things back. But over the course of time, we've just honed it down to one core platform, and that's the one line of communication that goes back and forth between myself and the children. So I send the home learning through the Seesaw, and then they respond everything. It's so lovely to see the children's responses. I love to see all the photos that they share. They also send me videos. Some of it's more academic, like their math work, and some of it's creative crafts that they've been making. Finally, I'd like to share with you a choice grid. I think that there are key objectives that we need to follow. So for English and Maths, I'll state to them the objective we're following, and I'll pre-prepare videos with instructions around that. For other areas though, this is called a positivity grid. So it has things like yoga, music, arts, crafts, trying to broaden out the things that they're doing during the day, particularly if they're restricted to their own home. And all of these links, it's a hyperdoc, so all of the links, you can click on the videos, you can click on the examples, and again, that's shared in the Padlet. So to conclude my session, thank you for listening. I hope you found maybe one thing that would be useful in your own setting. And I'm very active on Twitter, so if you'd like to connect with me, I'm at SteersKatie. Thanks for listening, everyone, and I'll stop sharing.
That's fabulous, Katie. Thank you so much. That's a complete treasure trove of activities. And I absolutely loved your online classroom where you've set up an entire virtual space, including a little virtual version of yourself. That was so lovely, and a great, actually a very great personal touch to add to get your students to feel more connected and build that sort of bond even when you're not there physically. That's wonderful. Thank you so much, Katie. I'll now take a couple of questions that have actually been coming in, some that we've tried to answer already, but some that are left, so I'll take some of these online. Some teachers wanted to ask, how is it that we can actually get parents to become more involved with their students' work, especially given the fact that we will need their help, and they don't always have that kind of time at hand. So does anybody have any suggestions on how they've been going about doing that? Sabina, you've been doing a lot of this asynchronously, so maybe you have some tips for these teachers?
Yeah, like I shared the kind of activities that we gave to the children. Now, because we are not restricting it to any particular time. So that's the reason that we are doing asynchronous, because we want them to do it at their own pace. So without putting the pressure on the parent, because we all know that everybody has limited time. So keeping that in mind, once we are getting into that system, the parent also starts understanding, because definitely they have to do something with the child. Otherwise, the child will not be able to do that. At the same time, giving them the comfort that, okay, they can do it in because like I said, that we are giving them a daily plan wherein they are doing some activities, but that's perfectly okay. If they're not able to finish that, fine. They have another day or two to do that. So that's the way I think we need to, everybody has to be with the other. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's so crucial at this point in time to actually extend a lot of grace and be empathetic about the fact that not everybody can suddenly overnight turn into these digital pros, and that children also need some time, as well as parents. They also need some time to be able to adapt to this change, and then we need to be gracious enough to be able to give them that leeway. All right, thank you for taking that question, Sabina. Moving on to our last speaker for today's session, Madhu. Madhu, over to you and your presentation.
Thank you so much, Ms. Pallavi. Good evening, everyone. I'm Madhu Nangia, and I'm here to present a session on managing student engagement online on behalf of GD Goenka World School. We are here to impart 21st century skills to students, where students are given the opportunity to hone their skills, and the effort is to empower students. It is rightly said that e-learning doesn't just happen. It requires careful planning and implementation. So online learning is not the next big thing. It is the now big thing, where learning cannot be curbed even during lockdown. Online learning can be divided into two parts: synchronous and asynchronous learning. Here are the 5 ways on which we can promote students' learning: to create inquiry, to share learning targets. By creating inquiry, we can trigger and stimulate the curiosity. To share learning targets. To share learning targets. Ownership, give them the ownership. Allow students to take responsibility of their own learning. Regular feedbacks, and facilitate independent, critical, and creative thinking skills, giving them more agency. For the above these, there are different tools and activities planned. Synchronous learning. Synchronous learning helps students to stay socially and cognitively connected. as it gives them a feel of the classroom environment. We remember 20% of what we hear, 40% of what we hear and see, and 80% of what we hear, see, and do. Learners are given here an opportunity to actively engage in hands-on learning and follow the instructions of the facilitators through Google Meet, thus enhancing their listening, thinking, and social skills. Students demonstrated their learning through exploring and experimenting. Here we encourage physical movement, integrating dance, yoga in their daily lessons. Blended teaching is also an example where a blend of technology, theatre, and dance are integrated. The tool used here is Google Classroom, where teachers can communicate, guide the students, share worksheets and assignments, and also give their valuable feedbacks to them. Children are acquiring knowledge through Kahoot and quiz.com, where learning takes place through games. Wow, an amazing bundle of knowledgeable children. Here is another example of virtual heritage. A virtual heritage walk, where students visited Qutub Minar, Lotus Temple, Red Fort, and many more, and were able to pen down their learning through research skills. Learners brainstormed about various platforms and recorded their presentation through pre-recorded videos and represented their learning through their creativity. Students demonstrated the art of storytelling through Story Pyramid. They recorded the videos, we compiled the same and shared with others. This shows that learning and sharing goes hand in hand. Good going, children. Keep learning, keep sharing, keep shining. We have also shared pictures and videos of rhyme recitation, storytelling, show and tell, children making best out of waste, art and craft, Labour's Day, Mother's Day, parent volunteers, and many more on the Padlet. The formative years of our lives shape us in a big way. So connect, complement, and communicate with children. This will boost their self-esteem. In this present age, where competition has spread its tentacle, and it is crucial to teach our kids to better themselves with each day, rather than to be better than their counterparts. In the end, I would just want to say, by whichever means the child is learning, the key for getting results is to pay more attention to what is going right, rather than what is going wrong. Thank you.
Virtually visit interesting places even while they're inside their own homes. A couple of interesting questions have also popped up now, and we'll take some of these questions now. So some of these, so panelists, please feel free. Katie, there was a question for you where they were asking what app you were using to take online classes with proper management. I'm assuming they're asking you about the Bitmoji app. So maybe if you could explain how you went about doing the Bitmoji classroom.
Yeah, sure. The way I created the virtual classroom was in Google Slides, and there's a number of, basically I watched a variety of YouTube tutorials, and in the Padlet which is shared today, I've put an example of a tutorial. Essentially you need to put a background screen on there in your Google Slides, and then you have to search for images which have a transparent background, and then you layer them on top of each other, and you have to put certain things in the foreground or in the backdrop, and then you create a hyperlink to individual objects within the screen. That's how I created it. It takes a little bit of time, and in fact, it's a labor of love. The more you do it, the more you want to make them.
I'm sure, and it sounds very, very exciting. And I'm sure this can actually be something that can even be used in middle school, if not
Definitely.
For the senior secondary students. Yeah.
If anyone wants to make one, just to say, in the Padlet, I've put my own slides, but also there's loads of backgrounds and furniture, so people feel free to use those and make your own too.
That's great. There's also some questions coming up around math, and specifically on how we can make math more interesting in an online environment. So if you could all let us know what kind of questions, what kind of tools, or what kind of suggestions you've been using in your classrooms for specifically teaching math. Sabina, maybe you have some ideas on math?
Yeah, definitely. We have been working on different kind of games that the students have been sent across. And then there are these quizzes that they have made, and then they have sent the responses to the teachers. So that's how we try to make it interesting. And there are some kind of ideas which the teachers have shared through the video, that how they can go about getting that responses to the teachers. That has really worked well.
That's great. Thank you so much for that. And for all those of you watching, there is a Padlet, which is a repository of all of these great ideas and resources and tools and tips that each of the teachers have put together. And this Padlet will also be made available to all of you along with a recording of this session. So you'll all be able to access all of these ideas in a little more depth and detail than the speakers could cover during their presentation. So you'll be able to use these in your own classrooms as well. And with that, I'd like to hand back over to Prabhat to close today's session. And I'd like to thank all the wonderful teachers for sharing their great ideas, as well as for the participants for asking such excellent questions. Thank you so much, all of you.
Thanks, Pallavi. It's actually been quite enticing for me to sit through this session. You know, I don't get a lot of opportunities doing this, but, you know, sitting in front of, you know, 5 very illustrated educators, you know, right from Sabina to Katie to Madhu to Sayanthani to yourself, I think it's it's been very, very enriching. You know, I can't thank all of you enough for having worked so hard and having prepared the presentation so that, you know, we answer a lot of queries and concerns that we all collectively face. You know, there's nothing exclusive that anybody faces. You know, it's same for everybody, and especially when we are talking about the primary children, the little children who are in our domain, right? I would equally like to, you know, I would fail in my duty if I don't thank the 2, you know, invisible people on the screen, Samreen Gauri and Malika Marwa, who form the FICCI Secretariat. They have been working night and day to put this, you know, whole program together. I think we have had some very, very interesting and exciting discussions over the webinar. You know, and the kind of practices all of you shared, your individual practices, your school practices have been very, very exciting, and I'm sure would have provided a lot of learning to many of the participants. As we all know, this is an evolving, you know, it's an evolving transaction, the way we are doing it. There are several questions we spoke about. What is the appropriate screen time for the tiny toddlers for grade 4, grade 5? There's no right answer today, but all of us are trying to find the right answers collectively together. And if we continue to exchange like this, you know, I'm sure we'll be able to, you know, reach and find the right answers to that also. Because the generation that we are dealing with, let me also say one thing which, you know, I always believe in. We all are sitting in some very, very interesting times right now, when all the students in K-12 schools are the ones who were born in 21st century. And when all the teachers who are in today's classrooms were born in the 20th century. It's not just a change of, you know, of a year, it's a change of a whole mindset. And, you know, we're dealing with the millennium generation. So, you know, much faster than us, this generation will adapt to you know, all these practices. It also has thrown us a lot of opportunities, you know. We do encounter extraordinary times. You know, this of course is huge extraordinary time, which is COVID-19. But even many schools in NCR or many places face closures because of weather extremes or other things. So this offers us as an opportunity to continue learning during that time, or even giving a remedial support to students, you know, instead of making them stay back in the school. So there are several such opportunities, and I'm sure this is going to open avenues for more schooling formats, you know, homeschooling, blended homeschooling and everything. But having said that, what I would also say that while all these practices will supplement to what we are doing, a face-to-face transaction is something which will always be there, and especially more so for this particular age group, because what we do, you know, that blissful hug between a teacher and a student, you know, or between 2 students, no virtual, you know, engagement can replace that. You know, the empathy that we learn with each other, that touch, that feel will always be there, and that all builds the emotional quotient. I just hope, I'll conclude by saying that, you know, right now we are in a situation when the pendulum has swung from one end to the other end, where the entire face-to-face has, you know, been replaced by virtual. When we get back to normal times, which I'm sure we would, I just hope the pendulum doesn't swing all the way back to our traditional practices. You know, we somewhere find a balance in between, and, you know, make best of, you know, both these worlds to continue to educate our students. So once again, thank you each and everybody on this screen. Thank you each and every participant sitting in different cities, all of the different countries. You know, I think your motivation keeps us going, and there are more such things which are going to come. Thank you so much, and have a good evening.
Thank you. Bye-bye.